In my last video, somebody commented and asked me what my plans are for the E30. And today I want to answer the day-old question of why a project car, why we're building this thing, and why a BMW e30. All that in today's episode. My name is Ryan, this is Project Racecar, let's get into it. I'm a firm believer that there are four main types of builds out there. There's drifting, a drag build, a street build, and a show build. So there are many examples of the E30 being all four of them. Being a street car, being a drift car, being a drag car, and even being a show car. So here's the first example of the BMW e30 drift car. And here's the example of a BMW drag car. Then the BMW as a show car. And finally, the example of a street car. Now, like all cars, every build has a specific purpose, i.e. drifting, drag racing, and street car. Now, my idea of a perfect street car and a perfect build is to try to make a well-balanced car that does almost everything. Trying to make it as clean and perfect as a show car. Trying to give it the good enough suspension and loweredness of a drift car. Trying to give it the power of a drag car, but also being able to drive it on the street and have it being street legal. So in the comments down below, I want to know how you guys would build Greta. What type of build you would do, what rims you would do, the color, the engine swap, the interior. I want to know it all in the comments down below. Leave your suggestions and I'll try to respond to all the comments. Now, here are some of my ideas of the BMW e30 build and why I want to do them. The first thing that we're going to talk about is the interior. With the interior, I don't want to strip it, I don't want to gut it, I don't want to make it a drift car. I still want to have passengers and still want to have the comfortability of a street car. So we're keeping the interior the exact same. We might do some modifications. And what I plan to do on the seats is keep these original seats because they are very comfy, they're original, they're easy, and just getting them reupholstered to something like this. I also think doing a couple interior mods of a street build rather than a show car are going to be a lot more beneficial. Now with a show car, normally you make everything very clean as well as mostly original. With the e30, what I want to do is have some aftermarket parts, however, trying to keep it as stock as possible. One thing that I do want to really do is a digital gauge cluster. As you can see, there are only 4 gauges in here, and I'm pretty sure that a lot of these lights don't even work. The original BMW e30 check light doesn't work. So if I'm planning on doing a full-blown race car type of build, I need to be able to monitor everything. I need to be able to monitor specific gauges like oil pressure, temp pressure, and I need to do it accurately. Going to the door cards, I think that if I cut out this middle piece and got it reupholstered in a same kind of cloth material while keeping the leather, it's going to match the seats very well. I also would like to get rid of this carpet and or paint it with a good carpet paint, and I would like to do it black. That way I have a dark interior, but lightness, and it contrasts very well. I'd love to do the same thing with the top. Now with the full black interior, it's going to be a lot nicer in here. It's going to feel a lot more retro, and it's just going to give the car a more modern feel to it. Moving on to the exterior, my plan for a perfect e30 build are a nice set of wheels, which are here, a decent body kit, which I would try to do something very in between, as well as what I believe the
most amazing color and my dream color for a build, which is from BMW e30 on Instagram. Now, the reason why I'm choosing this color is because I believe that it's going to have the prettiest look. It's going to complement the car very well. It'll be easy to take care of since it is a light color. And it's a custom paint job, which means that it will be very unique to the car.
Now, here are some pros and cons to a project car like the E30. The E30, there were millions of them made, and there is a big cult following on them. Now, the reasons why this is good is because things have been done before, and there is a whole bunch of aftermarket support, DIYs, and a lot of help with this car. There's a lot of companies that build specific parts for this car, whereas if you're going with something new that nobody has done before, you're going to have to create a lot of your own custom parts. On the con side of that, everything has been done before, and so you really have to create your own build, create something unique. And I think that this paint color is something that I haven't seen very often. A lot of the times people stick with white, black, and red, and that's not something that's my taste. I want something to be a little bit more poppy. I want something to be a little bit more out there without being something too crazy. Now, I think this antique green teal kind of color is going to be the best fit for the E30. I've looked at a lot of different colors, and this one I believe pops the best.
Okay, now that we've talked about the interior goals and the exterior goals, I want to talk mainly about the engine swap that I plan on doing. There's been a lot of swaps of S50 motors, which come from a BMW, LS's, as well as a couple of 2Js, hundreds of 2Js. Now, the reason why I'm picking this choice and why I want to do this engine swap is because you have to look at a couple main things. You have to look at reliability, you have to look at cost, and you have to look at if people have done before. Now, the reason why you have to look at these couple things is you have to look at how easy the engine is going to be to get. You know, you have to look at how many engines were made of this certain type, because if there's no aftermarket support on the engine that you throw in, it's going to be a lot harder to find specific parts to make it go fast. Another thing that you have to look at is reliability. How reliable the engines are when you're pushing them to a certain power for what you want to get. And finally, you have to look at the cost. The cost of a fully built 2J is going to be a lot more expensive than, say, a junkyard LS. Now, the engine that I finally plan on throwing into this car is some sort of 5.3 liter iron block, which is also an LS. It's a truck motor. Now, I've tried to do as much research as possible, and I found that a junkyard LS motor is $200 to $300. If you throw 10 pounds of boost at it, do a small amount of engine refreshing, they can make up to 600 horsepower on 10 pounds of boost. Now, what's great about this is that there were millions of engines made. There is a ton of aftermarket support for LS motors, and they can handle boost reliably, making 600 horsepower on just 10 pounds. Now, if I was trying to do that in a BMW motor, i.e. the S50 or so on and so forth, that's going to be a little bit more difficult. And BMW engines are a little bit more temperamental when it comes to power. But something like an LS, a $200 to $300 engine, I'm not going to care too much about if it blows. The other great part about the LS motor is that everybody has always swapped LSs into everything. LS swapped the world. So we're going to take that a step further, and do that with the BMW e30 318IS.
Now, some enthusiasts might say that I'm ruining the car by throwing an LS into it. But the thing is that it's my build, it's something that I think that I will appreciate, and it will be something that is fun. The best part about the car community is that it's what you want to do. It's not what other people want and what other people have done. It's something that you want to build, you want to spend the money on, and you want to use the headache for. And in my personal opinion, I believe that this is my dream build, and revisions can always be made. What you have to realize is that sometimes you want to just make good power, and the engine swap is the best way to do that. And if I go with something reliable like an iron block that's going to be able to handle a lot of power, then it's going to be something perfect for my wallet, for my sanity, and it's going to be something that will last forever. It's going to rip and just blow the smoke out of the tires.
And the final thing that I want to talk about the E30 is more of the suspension and underside of everything. Now that we've gotten to how much power I kind of want to make around the 600 mark, we've gotten to the body kit and the paint color that I want to do. We've gotten to the rims, we've gotten to the interior. Now we have to talk about what type of actual suspension and everything, what type of build that I want to go for. With something like drifting, you want specific springs to handle that. Certain springs and suspension, tie rods, the actual turning radius of the tires, and you want to look at all those factors so that you can go sideways and handle the car when it is out of control. As well as you would go with something a little bit more grippy in the rears, but also not too grippy so that you can lose traction. Now the second option is for something like a show car, which would be something like bags, somewhat more stock suspension feel. And that's something that maybe a little bit of camber, and that's not something that I want to specifically go with, because I want to have this car make a lot of power, be fast, and I don't want to be scraping on every single bump that I find. And the final suspension build is a drag setup, which is going to be a lot more stiffer in the rear end. You want big meaty tires, and you want to be able to hook. So all three of these are fully different type of builds for the suspension, and you have to have a plan on what you're going with and why you're doing it when you're searching for parts. Now, what I'm gonna try to do in my street build is make everything as balanced as possible. I want to make the car really well to handle. I want to make it low and that perfect kind of fit, but I also want to make it to where it can handle the power that I'm throwing at it. So I'm going to try to go for a balanced approach, where on some weekends I can go drifting, some weekends I can go to the drag strip, and some weekends I can just drive it around town.
And I've thought a lot about this build because it is my dream car. And I've thought about all the different ways of doing things, and looking at the different engine swaps, looking at if it's possible, looking at the headache of wiring into the factory harness or switching to a standalone ECU. I've also tried to think of what I want the car for, why I'm building it, and why this is my project car. I don't want to be appealing to other people because that won't necessarily make me happy. Sure, it'll be a cool car still, but it won't be directly my car. And that's what I'm really trying to go with. And at the end of the day, it is a wonderful car, and as long as I'm having fun and you guys are having fun, I believe that this should be an amazing build, and I am so very excited for everything to come. I'm excited for all the headaches of the engine swap. I'm excited to finally paint the car because that's something that I've never done before. I'm excited to swap out the interior and do something that I really like to do, and do something that I want, that I think will look clean. I'm also very excited to actually be able to pick up wheels because I've never purchased a set of aftermarket rims besides something on Facebook, which is something that I just thought would look good. And most of it all, I'm excited to see the channel grow, see you guys along for the ride. I appreciate all of your guys' support on Greta, on me just cleaning her up. On the next video that you guys will see on Greta, she will be hopefully paint corrected. And we're going to go through a whole video on doing the paint corrections so that all the panels actually hopefully match. So hopefully you guys can agree with some of the choices that I've actually picked, because again, I've thought a lot about this, and this is something that I really wanted to do. I wanted to go through the entire process of building a car and trying to pair everything together to make sure that it's something that I want. If you guys did enjoy the video today, make sure to give it a thumbs up. Please subscribe if you are new. And thank you guys so much for watching. My name was Ryan, and this was Project Racecar.